Starlight Stories is the newest short story collection focused on the High Republic era. I love the concept of these semi-anthology stories. They add more depth, new perspectives, and fun offshoots to the already in-depth stories of the Star Wars universe. We get to meet new characters, follow existing ones on different paths, and see familiar faces from new perspectives. This collection of stories is as varied as the authors behind them, pulling in some of the most prominent authors in all of Star Wars, not just the High Republic. As a bonus, this collection of stories features a look behind the curtain called Knights at the Round Table, where all of the authors get to sit down together to discuss what was called at the time Project Luminous and what would become the High Republic. The first story is Go Together, written by Charles Soule. This kicks off the anthology, and I'm going to jump ahead here and say this was absolutely my favorite one. It starts strong. We follow Joss and Pika Adren. The couple are technicians aboard Starlight Beacon. A critical situation arises and their technical expertise is put to the test. While dealing with that particular issue, the reader gets a small look into the Battle of Kerr. Neither Joss nor Pika are warriors, but their teamwork and tech skills help prevent catastrophic damage. This was a really fun read. The pacing was absolutely on point, and the three-act structure plays out evenly across the two-parter. I always appreciate a solid Star Wars story about non-Jedi characters. Don't get me wrong, I love the Jedi, but seeing the wider galaxy come into play is always appreciated. It was tight and well paced. A few of the other stories felt like there was some content that amounted to pretty much nothing, which hurts even more in a short story where time and space is so severely limited. The next story is First Duty by Cavan Scott. This time, we're with Velko Jagan, a new administrator aboard Starlight. She uncovers a dangerous conspiracy when an assassination attempt against a visiting ambassador happens right under her nose. We get a mini detective story that I wish had more time to unfold. It would have been cool to get some MacGuffins, some red herrings, some suspects who weren't guilty of the crime. It was also really fun to see how Star Wars forensics works, even if it was like a micro view of it. We also get to explore Velko as a character through the investigation, as she has to navigate her own inner conflict and get up to speed quick on the unique inhabitants of Starlight. Jedi Master Avar Kriss shows up to offer some support. I like the new aspects these anthology stories give, but I can't help but enjoy the crossover into the wider narrative. It seems a little contradictory to say I like that they're separate, but I also like that they're connected, but that's where I am with Star Wars. Having some core characters who would logically be around helps this story slip into the era and the overall wider arc, making Star Wars feel a little bit bigger. I really liked the second half of this. The investigation and resolution were satisfying. The first half I was wary of at first. I thought it had a lot of fluff that didn't amount to much, as I wasn't connected to this new character. My view on that did change as I kept reading. As I said, this is a semi-anthology series. The stories do stand alone, but there's characters, like Velko, that carry over. As I got to know Velko more, what I thought was fluff and filler in this one actually came out to be character development. Hidden Danger by Justina Ireland brings the Drengir back. Sort of. The Drengir are a sentient plant species steeped in the dark side. I like the Drengir as a villain, and I actually find them to be a larger threat for the Jedi specifically than the Nihil that are the main villains of the High Republic era. Velko is back. She's overseeing the Galactic Agricultural Alliance. When chaos reigns, she teams up with Gal Tarkfin, a Mon Calamari who's working Starlight Security, who was also featured in previous stories. To figure out what's happening, a plant that was spliced with some Drengir DNA, and I'm not sure if DNA is strictly the right word when we're talking about plants, even if they're sentient plants. Either way, that scientific splicing is responsible for the issues. The plant is doing something to those around it, causing them to act out. Professor Glenna Kipp, who was responsible for the hybrid experiment, helped the two eliminate the threat using some scientific methods. The story ends up being a word of warning on balancing scientific innovation and it leading to unforeseen consequences if you aren't extremely careful. This doesn't seem to be the most common Star Wars morality message, but if you think back over the whole course of the series, all the animation, all the varied stories, it does make a lot of sense and does fit in the universe. Past Mistakes by Cavan Scott continues Velko's journey. A former romantic interest, Vane Sarpo, shows their face on Starlight. Sarpo is arrested for smuggling weapons for the Nihil. Velko is torn between her personal history with Vane and her current responsibility to the Republic. This one lost me a little bit at that. Their history is there, it's a romantic history, but it's not compelling enough that you could overlook that this guy is aiding terrorists against the entire galaxy. Terrorists who have taken millions of lives. That should outweigh pretty much anything. Those are my words, not exactly part of the story, but that hit me like a sack of bricks when I saw that there was any conflict at all. She does do the right thing and puts her personal feelings aside and confronts Vane about supporting terrorism. He's involved with the Nihil, if that wasn't clear. Another investigation is underway with Velko teaming up with Tartfin once again. This time, they also get help from the Trandoshan Jedi Master, Skier. Vane is just as guilty as it seemed when he was first arrested, and the story shows the Nihil larger scheme as their presence in the galaxy grows. The big standout for me was in Velko's character growth. At this point, I'm starting to get a better feeling of who Velko is. Shadows Remain by Justine Ireland is the final story in the collection. This time, Tartfin gets to take the lead. She has her own internal struggle to deal with as she thinks someone close to her is involved in a conspiracy. The first clue is pretty glaring. Tartfin gets a mysterious order to disable security cameras in a senator's private quarters. She decides this is worth a deeper investigation to get to the why of it. She learns that Senator Gira Staros is working with the Nihil against the Republic. Tartfin gets too close to the truth and ends up captured. During her time in captivity, she continues to build her case while trying to find a way to escape Tartfin's character. During her time in captivity, she continues to build her case all the while trying to find a way to escape. Tartfin's character is explored through loyalty, duty, accountability, and the razor-thin margin between doing what's right and outright rebelling. A lot of this story felt by the numbers to me, but after having Tartfin be a supporting character as most of these stories, it was nice to see them take the lead. Full disclosure for all of these stories, I am not up to date on the larger High Republic publishing initiative, so take my character critiques with a grain of salt. I'm nearly done with Phase 1, and I am enjoying it. I intend to finish the whole thing, and there's going to be a lot of content coming to the channel about it. I just wanted to put this disclaimer out there for the big-time High Republic fans who may be screaming at their phones or computer screens right now as I am getting characters or events a little bit mixed up because I haven't gotten there in the larger novels. All in all, I really liked Starlight Stories. I was hoping for a bit more of an anthology, but since all these stories were collected, following the characters from one to the next made it feel more like chapters than individual stories. I didn't read these in the Insider magazine issues that they came out in. Each story was broken up into 2 parts that were included in separate issues of Insider magazine. Now that I am a subscriber of that publication, I will say that I very much prefer reading these stories in a collection instead of getting half a story every few months. That's really hard for me to track. Reading them all as a collective, and I'm not sure if this was the intention or not, and because pretty much every story ended up being an investigation with the first one feeling like it didn't quite belong with the collection, it would be pretty cool to establish the Star Wars Sherlock Holmes. As a nice bonus, this collection of stories ends with a round table of sorts called Knights at the Round Table, where all the authors talk about coming together to plan things for the High Republic Multimedia Initiative that was codenamed Project Luminous when it was being conceived. This series is well worth checking out. It gives me a lot of vibes of growing up when the expanded universe, now Legends, were the only new Star Wars stories we were getting. The prequel trilogy wasn't even on the radar for most of my childhood. Big thank you to Titan Magazine for sending over a review copy of this book so I could share it with all of you. Starlight Stories is available now wherever you get your books, and it is worth the modest cover price for 5 unique stories and an interview with these talented authors. Check out this transmission next to dive back into Star Wars lore.